we carry on to bury our people in a European Christian way, to the point of the mourning ritual with the black clothes, which was instituted, by the way, by Queen Victoria. After the death of her husbands, she said she will no more wear bright colors. She will be in a permanent state of mourning. And that thing, English tradition, became adopted
into African tradition.
Into African traditions. So mhlawumbi ke kule ndaba yama funeral and how we, because African tradition, in fact, African science is based on death. All that Africans know comes from the ritual of death. We don't see death as an end of life. We see death as a ritual. It's a rite of passage. So all our science is based on that rite of passage, death. Because what we know is what our ancestors left behind for us.
Yes.
So without death, we would not have the knowledge that we have. So, Angazi, from your perspective, Abba, how then could we fix linking? Let's start with the death, because death is the beginning of a new life, as much as birth is the beginning of this life. How can we tackle that in order to rebalance and bring back our society to harmony, from even a Rastafari perspective?
All right. Give thanks,
my Lord,
Abba Ayalew, for such a deep insight. You see, life, it's a book of the dead. Life, it's a book that we write based on the experiences of the dead. People will tell you about Pythagoras, Aristotle, they're dead men. People will tell you about Adam until to Jesus, they're dead men. People will tell you about their saints, their holy men, their philosophers, they're dead men. Everything that we're doing here is based on the works of those who are dead. Now that is in English. But if we are going to approach it in our language, what we call Sirona Sarona Karona. Which is what they call Indigenous Knowledge System, IKS. Now, if we are going to approach it Kasirona, Arena Lifu, the word death entered the Zulu vocabulary, the African vocabulary late. We had Aona Mutu Ushwile, Mutu Watloka Fana. So bar o tlhokafetse bane o tlhokiwa ke badimo o tlhokilwe ke badimo. So ha sa leo ka mona o ka nkane ha le bitla. It's on the other side of the grave. So, and therefore the grave is what separates this side of life, which we call the living, the touchable, the mortal, the spirit going through human experience, and the grave, and the other side, which is the spirit in absence of the human experience. Because moya utsutsi nama, utsutsi kobo ya nama, ye re bitsang gore ke setopo. So ha sa gata fatshe wa bona, it's got nothing to earth the earth, to earth the earth with, to connect with. Ki modimo o badimong. That is why we never had this thing that people are going to hell, people are going to heaven. Everyone. Now it is the ritual of death that therefore make that person mudimu or any other thing. That is why mopata morere hamba kahle ube idlozi elihle. You understand me? Go and be a good ancestor. Even if he was a bad ancestor, but the ritual of death are meant to transform him into a good ancestor. It's what in ancient Khmer they call the Osirification, the making of one into an Osiris.
Yes.
Because the first funerary text was about Osiris. The first burial, the first recorded death, was Osiris' death. And the rites of passage from this world to the next world, right to the weighing of his heart against the feather, and therefore make him the Lord of the dead. Basotho ba tla re ke mopedi, ke moholo wa seaparalume, ke motho wa pele Oh, the first man to die and come back and teach us about the ways of the dead, the ways of Badimu. Why are we performing the rituals of the ancestors, but we are not performing the rituals of Umenzi, of Unkulunkulu? Which is the corruption of Kulukulwani. This Mr. Callaway, a missionary who was doing Christian missionary work among the Zulus, when he asked the Zulus, who is your first ancestor? They say it's Kulukulwani. But because he can't pronounce the word Kulukulwani, he say Unkulunkulu. So Unkulunkulu is a corruption of Kulukulwani. Now Kulukulwani is the first man. The Jews will have Adam as their first man. Basotho will have Mopedi as the first man. And so forth. But Pedi re tabolela ka Khobiane. Ke morwa wa Khobe. Then the Sechaba, the people will say ke batho ba Khobe. Because Khobe is God, ka Sepedi. Modimo ke Setswana. But when the Bible was translated into Setswana, and then they went around and preaching, they also moved with this word Modimo. So but Bapedi ba Khobe. So that is why Sechaba sitsiwe as batho ba Khobe. A woman who's pregnant ke motho wa Khobe. Motho wa uluka, a very kind person. Hey, whatever ayaleu ke motho wa Khobe. Understand? So now Khobian will be the first man. My point here is that everyone have their first man or their first ancestors or their first ancestor who is responsible for teaching us about the rituals of death, the rituals of life, how we communicate le Badimo, ho phahla. So the first date became the first ancestors. And the first ancestors became the first teachers of life and death, because they did die and come back to us through visions. Now the other mistake that the Christian missionaries made also is this thing that when we talk like this, they will be saying we are worshiping the dead. Now there is no African word for ancestor worship. Now we're saying if you can't name it, you can't claim it. So if you don't have a word for it, what is
exist.
Doesn't exist. What is polytheism? Okay. We don't have polytheism. We don't have that. We don't have animism. We don't have pantheism. We don't have deities and divinities and demons,
for that matter.
Or monotheism for that particular matter. So therefore, what we are dealing with now, we are dealing with a situation where we are caught up in a situation where we are using European concepts to define African phenomena. We are saying Mudimu is God, as if Mudimu has an English name, like most Africans who were colonized under apartheid, that you have to be Nelson Rolihlahla Mandela. My name is Rolihlahla, but he must have an English name, which is basically a Christian name, which is basically a colonial name. Because colonialism, when it was brought to us, it came with triple C. That they're coming to colonize, Christianize, and commercialize. Remember those who claim to have discovered us, the Jan van Riebeeck, when he came here with the dromedaries, the Goede Hoop and the Reiger. It was a company. It was a Dutch East India company. So they were on a commercial mission here. So they discovered us by fault because they were looking for a refreshment station on their way to India. So we become a project of colonization, Christianization, and commercialization, because we were sold as slaves, as human cargoes. So at one time we were commodities to be sold. We were converted. Now you see the process of conversion in our African mysticism or in our witchcraft or kabulo ibaronano. It is what we will call the zombification.
Yeah, man.
So they replace your soul with the soul of the other.
Something else.
So they've replaced your African soul with a foreign soul in the name of Judeo-Christianity.
Now we are zombies.
Now we are zombies.
Religious zombies.
So we are zombies and demons of colonialism. So we are zombies of other religions. So we are not true to our culture. We are not true to our nature, because our culture, it is a reflection of our nature. Ka Sepedi re re ke tlhago ya gage. Tlhago ke nature.
Imbo
Imbo yake. That is his nature. Now you have changed his nature for the nature of the other. So therefore you have effectively made that person a zombie. So what makes the church yard? The church yard is a zombie yard. It's where people are being zombified. So the whole process of Sunday and churches and congregation is zombification of the Africans. You understand? So, well, I know Africans hate everything about colonialism except Christianity.
Exactly.
You see,
True.
They hate.
They
these-
hate the dress,
everything.
but not the man.
And there is